Hi there. We love doing live webinars where we can share best practices and topics of interest to you. To learn more and to access the resources referenced in this video, please scroll down to the video description. Without further ado, I'll turn you over to the team.
Okay, I think we'll begin. So thanks everybody for attending today's webinar, which is entitled Offline Mobile Lunch and Learn. So the main topic for today is going to be to talk about how having a mobile app that works offline is a very important component of your electronic visit verification solution. And thanks again for attending. I just want to see if we are recording the session. And it looks like we are. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, great. So the agenda for today is just a welcome to the community. So if you've not been to an Ancoda webinar before, we really try not to be, all about software vendors selling to people and things like that. Not to say we wouldn't love for people to become our customers and that sort of thing. That is why we exist as a company. But we really try to make our webinars very informative and community-based. So we'll talk about a welcome to the community. And then our main topic for today is electronic visit verification and offline mobile and how those play together. And we'll open into the community for questions and answers and finish up from there. So just kind of, again, sticking in the spirit of community, we really do try to make these webinars all are welcome. I am very proud that I actually before, not this webinar, but a previous one, I got an email from an agency that said, hey, we have our own software that we built ourselves. We don't intend to change, but is it still okay if we come? And the answer is certainly yes. So, it really, what we're trying to do is just kind of help everybody nationwide with electronic visit verification. And we're just going to facilitate. And we also are trying to provide many resources like this one to the community. And you'll hear about some more as we go on. Okay, so for today's presentation content itself, we're going to start with understanding what's our goal and talk about why offline matters. And then we'll jump into an explanation and a demo of having mobile that works offline. And then we'll go into the questions and answers. Okay, so the goal, as you might have expected in this webinar, would be for me to say, oh, it's really important that you have offline mobile for this, that, or the other reason. But I really want to focus on our main goal as home care agencies, which is that we're out there to deliver the best possible care that we can. And item number 2 is that we need to make sure that we're getting paid so we can focus on goal 1. And actually the mission of Ancoda is, we really try to focus on empowering the heroes, and we do consider home care agencies to be heroes that are caring for the elderly and disabled staying in their homes to focus on care rather than the tech. So we like to be here so we can focus on the tech and let you focus on the care. So that's really the goal in pretty much everything we do in home care, but bringing it into the context of what we're going to talk about today, this is an important topic. So as probably everybody on the line knows, the 21st Century Cures Act was passed with strong bipartisan support to try to make, healthcare and all kinds of care better across the company. And if we look at that, or the country rather, and if we look at all of that legislation, really our piece was only a small piece, but it really has a profound impact on our industry. And what that piece is this part that says that if you're going to provide home care services that are paid for, by the government, so most of us here in the kind of home care that we do are paid by Medicaid and Veterans Administration and various county programs and sometimes city programs and things like that. All of those government payers are saying, if you're going to do home care for us, you have to prove that you're doing it. And they've outlined the policy behind that, which says that in addition to just, telling us and claiming what you've done and saying, okay, I did, 6 units of care and I need you to pay me for $1.50 of service, we need to tell them what was the type of service and who was the caregiver and when exactly did they arrive and when did they depart. And then one of the really hard parts is, what is the location? So that's kind of the electronic visit verification piece. And that could be done in several different ways. So it could be done with voice telephony and using the client's home phone. So if you call from the client's home phone and it has to be a landline, you could verify they were there, or you could use a mobile app. And when we use a mobile app, we verify the location with global positioning satellite or GPS. And that's really what's come down, and all agencies around the country need to comply with the EVV mandate. And we're kind of in a state where the original legislation said that this had to be up and running by January 1st of 2019. And then it was changed to give the states until January 1st of 2020. But then there was an initiative that went up last year that said, hey, we need you to, as a state Medicaid leader, send us a letter if you're not going to be fully up and running by January 1st of 2020, and we could extend you as far as January 1st of 2021 for you to be up and running on EVV, as long as your letter establishes that you're making a strong, what they call a good faith effort to be compliant with EVV. And so out of the 50 states and the territories, not 100% of them, but I think 48 states did say, hey, please give us until January 1st, and and CMS approved those and that type of thing. And now every state is in different stages of rolling that out, and some are live. So we're live in Florida, and we're live in Pennsylvania, and a lot of different states are up and running. And many states, by the way, even prior to the EVV mandate, had put their own mandates in place. So, for example, the state of Missouri has had a requirement for people to do, EVV-like services, use GPS or mobile app for quite a number of years, and that type of thing. But now it's getting, to the point where there is a federal standard, although Medicaid is administered on a state-by-state level, and everybody needs to do that and comply. So that's how that's why this is really important, and we'll get a little bit into more detail about why specifically this becomes even more important. But I've never tried this before, and I'd like to try to take a poll, so I'm going to do that now. And I'm going to select a poll and launch it. So the question, as you see on the screen, is going to be, how do my caregivers do their EVV today? So that poll is open, and we'll see if we can get results on that. And so far I see, all right, the first person voted, and now everybody's voting pretty quickly. Perfect. Okay, and it looks like the people on this line so far, I'm seeing some results on my screen that show, okay, we're around 50% voted. We're going to give it a little more time. So far, as the numbers ring up, we have the biggest answer is that a lot of the agencies are around half and half, and a good number of the agencies as well, it's just taking the lead. So right now it says 43% are mostly using a mobile app, and 36% are around half and half, and only 11% are mostly voice telephony. And we also have 10% say that they're not doing EVV. So at this point, I'll close the poll. And yeah, so those are the final numbers. So 45% mostly mobile, 10% mostly voice telephony, 34% around half and half, and 10% not doing EVV at all. So thank you for answering that. All right, so kind of moving back into kind of the presentation, let's talk about how this works. But I'm going to talk about it not from the technical perspective. And by the way, I mean, we are happy to talk to anybody about how it does work technically. And if you want to meet with us, we'll let you know how to do that later in the meeting. But I really want to talk about it from the caregiver's perspective. And so the bottom line is that they'll need to get their app and download it from the appropriate store. So if they have an iPhone, they'll get that from the Apple Store, or if they have an Android phone, they'll get it from Google Play. And then for offline mobile to work, there does need to be a login when they do have the internet access, and that could be on their home Wi-Fi, or it could be because they have the mobile network and they're using their phone. So that's how it goes. But then when you have an offline mobile app, if the caregiver loses coverage, it's okay, because the app kind of knows because you connected. It knows what's on your schedule for today, and it even knows the details of when that visit's supposed to start and end if you do scheduling, and what the care plan items are for that individual. And some people don't really understand this, but the mobile network that you use for your phone to connect to be able to do your email and get to the internet and that kind of thing is actually a different network than the GPS satellite constellation. So the GPS are satellites that are geosynchronous satellites around the Earth. And even if you don't have Wi-Fi or mobile coverage, you can still get the location of the cell phones. And that's basically how it works. And I guess a last piece here is, like, even if they lose coverage, it's okay, because the app remembers, and you could capture your arrival time, your departure time, your GPS, your tasks, all those things. And I'll demonstrate this in a minute. But then what I should have put as another bullet is that when the caregiver gets back into mobile coverage, then the system detects that, and you'll be able to, things will sync. And I'll just show you how that works. Okay, so I'll show you how it works online and how it works offline. So I'm going to switch screens here for a minute. And first, I'm going to bring up a scheduling screen. So this is just from a demo environment. And then what I need to do is wake up my phone. And I'm going to bring onto the screen here basically a view of my mobile phone. So here, this is actually, literally my, I'm using an Android phone, which is a Samsung Galaxy S8, and here I just hit on settings, and it's just my phone live. And I'm gonna go into the Ancoda Caregiver app here. And it looks like, all right, I'm already logged in. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Ancoda, I mean, I'm sure that you have something that looks similar to this, but you have a schedule board. And in this case, I have, the colors indicate the statuses. So I have 30 closed visits, and a couple that are on hold. I have 73 more scheduled for the week. I have 2 people on site right now. And that's the case with Betty White here. So I'm logged in as the caregiver who is on site with Betty White. And I'm going to bring the mobile screen onto the screen here. And since I'm arrived, it knows that, and it knows that I'm expected to report my departure. So I'm going to go ahead and by the way, I mean, my phone is online at this point. So we're just demonstrating how it works online. So it's saying, hey, you got there at 7:58 this morning. You're leaving at 12:13. You could go ahead and accept the time. And then, since they did the expected amount of time, it's now letting them report their tasks. And what I realize is I'm actually clicking on my screen to do that, but what I should do, which is much faster, is just do it on the mobile phone here. So now I'm just using my mobile phone directly and saying the laundry wasn't needed today. Let's say that the tidying and dusting wasn't needed today either, but I completed the bath and the floor and the dressing and grooming, and of course, whatever's on that individual's care plan. And then as I go on from there, it's going to go and say, okay, great. Let's get the signature, and all these things, of course, are configurable. So if in your state you need client signatures, you could get that, or you need caregiver signatures, whatever you need to do. And then here, you could go in and put any notes that you wish to put in. Let me accept my signature up there, by the way. All right, so if I go and I put some notes in on my phone, I could say, I could just speak into the phone. So I'm just going to hit the microphone and say, we had a great day of care with Betty White today. Okay, so so you can speak it in and that sort of thing. And now when you have all your information, you go ahead and submit your visit, and it says, great, do your final confirmation, and you're all set. And that visit will close out for you. So if I go back to my home screen here, now what I'm going to do is refresh the schedule screen here, and we're going to see that this Betty White visit is going to change colors because we have a departure, and so on and so forth. There's a red magnifying glass on this visit. We'll come back to that in a minute, but let's kind of stick to the main focus of today, which is, how does this work when you're offline? So again, using the controls of my phone, I'm going to my home screen, and I'm going to put the phone offline. So the way I'm doing that is I'm going to go into this connections tab, and if you have an iPhone, it's a little bit different, but it should work. I mean, with Ancoda, or if you do have another solution, most people have their apps for both iPhone and Android, and we do. So there's really two kinds of networks you could have. The first one here up top, I'll point on the screen, is the Wi-Fi. So my Wi-Fi is off, but at this point, my data usage is on, and it basically says here, if I point out here on the screen, it says, mobile data is on, access the internet through your mobile network. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to turn that off. And okay, so now I don't have mobile network. And as a caregiver, I'm going to go on and do my next visit. So here, I'll kind of go back to the home screen, and you'll be able to watch me do this. I'm going to go back in my Ancoda Caregiver app, and I see that my Betty White visit is closed up top, but I have this other visit with Morgan Freeman. And and by the way, I could jump in there and see the details, and if I click on the phone, it'll it'll dial, well, take you to my phone screen and let me dial that phone number. If I click on the map, it'll take me and give me my Google turn-by-turn directions with Google Maps and that kind of thing. But really kind of focusing on the very specific EVV portion, I'm going to push right now that I'm reporting arrival, and I'm accepting my time at 12:17. And the next thing that this is configurable as well, but most of our clients and their caregivers have set schedules. And if you're just going to EVV for the first time and you've been seeing paper timesheets, one big awakening you're going to get is that in the world of paper timesheets, if the person's scheduled, let's say from noon to 2, you're going to get that, let's say, weekly timesheet back, and it's going to miraculously say that every day they were there from noon to 2. But in reality, they aren't there exactly from noon to 2, and we hope that our caregivers are doing all their time and that kind of thing. But maybe one day the traffic was good, they got there at 11:55. One day the traffic was bad, they got there at 12:04, and then they'll hopefully stay a few minutes over. But when you get paper timesheets, like I said, I mean, it's always miraculously the exact time that it was scheduled. But here in the world of EVV, I have this 2-hour visit. I actually didn't arrive at noon as was scheduled here. I arrived at 12:17. So the system's telling you right there, your expected departure is at 2:17. So I'm going to say, okay, here, I'm going to do that on my phone and that kind of thing. So now my arrival's been reported. And if I go and I do that same thing where I refresh the screen, this visit here with Morgan Freeman, it was in this light green status color. That means that they haven't arrived yet. And if I refresh the screen here, it's still that case. Okay, so so we have like a mismatch here, right? So I could see that that from the perspective of the mobile app, it shows that I'm clocked in, and I could go ahead and I could report some tasks, and I could say, oh, by the way, I just finished the dressing and the grooming. And again, I keep doing it on the screen, but I could do it on my phone. And we did some toileting and that kind of thing. So I can mark those tasks as done. And and again, I mean, nothing's happening back here on the main screen and that type of thing. So so that's kind of how it flows. I mean, all the information is being captured in your mobile app, even though it's not being reflected here on the main screen. Okay, so even though we've only been on our visit for a couple minutes, we'll just to demonstrate the concept, we're going to go now back to our scheduled visits and say that we want to report our departure. And so here it's saying, okay, great, you're clocking out, and it's 12:19. Right up there, it says it's a 2-minute duration. And then similarly to when it warned you how long you were on, it's kind of double checking you here, saying, hey, your expected departure time is not until 2:17. You should clock back in 1 hour and 57 minutes. One thing about this reminder, or that kind of reminds me to share another thing, is for labor law purposes, we capture the arrival time as soon as they hit the arrive button. And the arrival, I mean, takes just a couple seconds to do, but sometimes the departure, if you have a long list of tasks, might take longer. We capture their departure when they are finished with their departure on their phone. So so if it takes a minute, we're going to give the caregiver that extra minute. But anyway, in this case, it remembers, of course, that I had already done the dressing and grooming, and I'll say that I did the meals and dishes, and I did the trash removal and that kind of thing. And then we'll go to my screen where I'm going to put in my signature and accept it. And so one thing working offline is if I go here and I try that little trick with with the microphone, and I say we had a great day. I actually, oh, you can see it right here. It says no network connection. So unfortunately, when you're working offline, that is one feature that you use that some caregivers like. They like to do their, providing notes with the microphone. So that's not going to work for you. But, so in that case, they would have to use the keyboard to type their notes and say, good visit, right? So, so we have that, and then we'll go ahead and we'll submit the visit. And, and I'm going to submit it. And now we have this visit and it's completed, and it took however many minutes it took, and all that sort of thing. But as far as, so here I am, I'm still at the caregiver's home and I still don't have mobile network. And again, here, if I go and I refresh this screen, I mean, as far as the back office knows, nothing has really, kind of transpired and that kind of thing. Okay, so now we'll do, what happens now. I leave the house and I get in my car and I start driving, and, maybe as soon as I get closer to a bigger street or a highway, I have cell coverage again. And the way I'm going to simulate that is exactly how I did it earlier. I'm going to go back in my settings, and I'm going to go into connections and say that, now my data usage is, I'm going to turn it back on. So I'm going to say, please give me mobile data. Okay, so here, this is the setting that I just made. And, that's really all that happens on the mobile. And as you can see, it tells me I have games and Words with Friends that want me to play. So that's a little bit embarrassing, but it is what it is. All right, but then we'll kind of go from here, and now I'm going to refresh the, kind of, this is more your back office screen. And as soon as I go ahead and I do the refresh, I'm going to get, all of the data that happened. So, here I see that they clocked in at 12:17, they clocked out at 12:21. And I mentioned earlier that, you see these visits have this nice white magnifying glass. And ANCODA, that means that they're all good for billing and payroll. But this red magnifying glass means that they're not. And we could see the reasons here. So I clicked on the red magnifying glass, and a couple things are happening here. So first of all, it's saying that my, that I did my tasks and that was all great, but it says that my GPS location wasn't exactly where I was supposed to be. And we could dig into that further, and also told me that I had a problem with my visit duration. So it's going to give me all those EVV checks. And here, if I look just to show on a map, I actually am pretty close to this location here in Boston, but we'll kind of see what happened here. Okay, so here the 0 is the expected location of the visit, and in this case, it says that I'm here, and I guess truth be told, I am actually close to the visit, but there is a problem that sometimes happens in big cities where you have what's called the urban canyon effect, and sometimes the GPS is a little bit off. So, for our customers in cities, we'll usually put a little bit more leeway in here. We currently have about 150 foot sort of radius that we use, and that kind of thing. So, so from here, of course, I mean, the big problem in this visit, in addition to the EVV, would be the fact that we only had a short visit. So I guess you would correct the times, and most of our customers are going to back that up with a paper timesheet. But even for now, just to point this out, if I go, after you have that magnifying glass says things aren't good, what generally happens, and it's different state by state, is you have to choose like the reason why the EVV wasn't right in this case. And I could say, whatever the case may be. And let's see, so I confirm with the client that, this was corrected, and, blah, blah, blah. So you can find the appropriate reason, but you see that here, these are numbered in different states, depending on who your clearinghouse and your, whether it's MCOs or Medicaid itself, will generally have certain approval codes that that they'll accept. And so if your visit has a problem with EVV, what often happens is you submit it to the clearinghouse, or however it goes, the clearinghouse, or to Medicaid themselves, or to the aggregator. Every state is different in that regard, and then they're going to check it and say, I see an EVV error here, and then they're going to look for that, for that reason, and that kind of thing. And the way that in the states that we're fully integrated, once we send the visit and we send with that reason code, then the state will, or the whoever it is, the clearinghouse or the aggregator, will say, okay, well, great, I saw an EVV error here, but it has been, kind of explained by the home care by the home care agency, and they put a reason code in there, and then they won't hold that claim up for you, and that's about it. So here, just as I refresh the screen one more time, this visit is now, kind of been approved for billing and payroll. It's still a 4-minute visit, so it has no billable time, which was the other error that I showed you. So there's a lot, kind of going on there. But hopefully from there you get the idea of, how it works when you lose coverage on the mobile app and how it works when you get back on coverage. All right, so with that, let me continue through our agenda. And really, this is my last slide with a lot of detail in it, and then we'll open it up for questions from the community. But I call this the reality, and so one of the things I should have mentioned when I was describing the 21st Century Cures Act is that even though the states were given this dispensation to say, hey, you have it really until January 1st, 2021 to have your EVV program up and running and in place, they really didn't take the responsibility off of individual agencies. So, now that we're into 2020 as an agency, you should have EVV information. You should be collecting that now, even if your state, hasn't, gotten its program together. So I just wanted to point that out. All right. The next thing is that, so the big question, we get asked this a lot, is, what is the state going to do with this data, right? And I try to answer one question. I mean, if if things aren't perfect, no agency is going to be expected to be perfect, but they're going to look at statistics and they're going to look at some details, right? So they're going to look, at and this is what we've seen in different states. For example, Florida put out a memo when they went live in February, and they said, we really expect you to be 85% EVV compliant by July. So that's what they put out there, and and that type of thing. So they're kind of setting a target, and the fact that they said 85%, kind of sends a message. They're saying, hey, we're not expecting perfection, we're expecting 85%. But ultimately, I mean, let's think about how this is going to work. Is that the state's going to have all the agencies' data in the same database, and they're going to say, this home care agency is 93% compliant, and this other one is 27% compliant. And they're going to use that to figure out who to go off and do audits on, right? So bottom line is, you want to be on board with EVV in your agency, so you don't draw attention to yourself and get unnecessarily unnecessarily singled out for audits and that kind of thing. I mean, we all need to be audited on an occasional basis, but we don't want to draw that attention to ourselves by being non-compliant. But the other thing, and I probably should have put an extra slide on this, is that we kind of, and I hate to call us out on this, but most of our agencies generally have, at least those one or two caregivers, and they're probably great caregivers, and they're the most honest and loving people that we know. But when we started rolling out our telephony or our mobile app, what we found was that just this person, they just were intimidated by it, or they didn't have a smartphone, or maybe there's the case where more and more people, I would say there's very few young people in the world that have home phones. Everybody just has cell phones, and a lot of elderly people are kind of getting into that camp as well. So they only have a mobile phone. They don't have a home phone anymore, and that kind of thing. So for that whole variety of reasons, we probably in our agencies have that, one or two or maybe more caregivers who we've never really made them clock in, and they just kind of give us their paper timesheets, and and that's kind of been okay. But if you think about this again, once all the data is in a computer, the state's going to say, well, I could see compliance by agency, but they could also see compliance by individual, and they're going to be able to say, hey, there's this person who's receiving 24 hours a week of care, or 96 units a week of care, and and since we went live with EVV, we don't see any EVV information, and that is something that could kind of catch their attention and say there might be some fraud going on here. So now's the time to start having that discussion with that one or two caregivers and say, hey, we know you're a great caregiver, we know you're the most honest person we have, but these days of not requiring you to do EVV like everybody else, it's coming to an end. And and it's not me. I mean, I trust you implicitly, but it's really it's the law, and I really need you to comply. So that's the conversation that we all need to be, having with that handful or more of caregivers. And for those of you on the line who are not paid by Medicaid, or maybe only have one or two Medicaid clients and you're mostly private pay, as far as the official 21st Century Cures Act, it doesn't really mandate this for you, but it is becoming more and more the standard of care, and that type of thing. And in state licensing and CNA licensing and various things like that, we are seeing that even private pay agencies are all speaking the lingo of how to do that as well, or needing to do EVV as well. So I think that's kind of everything that I have as far as presentation. And so at this point, let me turn it over to my co-host Sarah and see if we've gotten any questions from the community that have come up.
We do have a couple questions. The first question is, what if a patient can't sign and the family member is not there to sign? Can they go back on another day to get the signature?
Yeah, so this is, so some of these questions are going to be, I could give the answer of like how our agencies are doing it, but in some senses, I'm going to have to put the caveat that you're going to have to check with the requirements of your state. But just like anything else, I mean, not having a signature is just like any other EVV error. And in the states where there's a code, it could be that they'll say, well, we have an exception code, client not awake to give signature or unable to give signature, for whatever reason, and that would be how you get through it. Or we have seen other situations like that. So I think I can't really give, especially since we're on a all 50 states represented potentially on this webinar, I can't give a nationwide answer to that question. But I guess I am 100% sure that there's going to be that situation is going to happen to all of us, and that we are, going to be in the position of having to explain it, just like we explain any other error in the office when we do our review. And Sarah, before we go to the next question, let me just kind of say to the community here that this GoToWebinar that you're using today might be a little tricky, but there is a place where you could go and type in questions or type in chat, and in either one of those windows you'll be able to kind of put in the information, and then Sarah will ask the question. So what's next, Sarah?
All right, great. So the next question is, we are in Florida, and one of the biggest issues is in the scheduled visit time versus the time the visit is performed. Patients can change all the time when they want the visit to occur. If the visit is done outside the visit scheduled window, it's considered a complaint or not compliant visit. I got that wrong. Sorry.
Yeah,
wondering if it's compliance or non-compliance there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then can you change the scheduled time after the visit was done? So if you can kind of explain how it at least works in CODA, that would be great.
Yeah, for sure. So the way that, what we found with most agencies, and especially, this happens in Florida and other states, there's a lot of consumer-directed programs where we don't even know what time the caregivers are going to be there. So, most of the agencies are looking by really looking at the duration of the visit as opposed to the actual scheduled times. So I haven't run into that situation in Florida, but it does sound like a kind of a pain in the neck. I think that if if the situation is it's scheduled from noon to 2, and as we know, we have those tight relationships between our clients and our caregivers, which we love, where the client will say, hey, like my friend is coming for lunch, could you come a little later today or a little earlier? Those things happen, and they're usually good. I know that, if I kind of jump back to that same, ANCODA screen where, like let's say I'm in the approval dashboard on this, it's kind of like, you could tell that you could override these times if there's an error there, but we kind of have a little secret place where you could change times up here. The scheduled times, we show like scheduled times, EVV times, and then the corrected times. And like on our system, even though these don't look like they're editable, the authorized people in the organization would be able to change the time. So that's kind of how our customers handle it. They're like, okay, well, it was scheduled 8 to 10, but for all kinds of good reasons, they went to from 9 to 11 today. Then you would just go here, change it from 9 to 11, and then save the details, and then that would make things match. So that's kind of how that's being handled in our system. But yeah, another great question. Back to you, Sarah.
All right, thank you for that. Another question, is being offline the same as their phone being turned off?
So let's see. So if they're, I guess in our case, like if you start the app, you could even like kill the app and it still remembers the information, and then when you come back into the app, it's there, and kind of, so the bottom line is the information is stored in the app. But if the phone is is turned off, then like let's say that they forgot to charge their battery, they get there, they do their clock in, they turn their phone off, and then they want to turn it back on right when it's time to clock out. I mean, you can't really report your arrival or your departure if your phone's turned off. So I guess that, to answer the question directly, like, being offline and having your phone turned off are different things. But, bottom line is that what we're trying to cover here is the case where, your phone is turned on, you just can't get to the internet or the mobile network for passing data. So that's the case that we're trying to cover.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Here's another question. Let me see, we have a few of them, so let me try to make sure I get them all answered. One from one of our customers that's online, is the app ready and how do we get it configured? And I can jump in and say, yeah, it's ready and we can help you with that. So we can reach out to you there. What if you take your client to the grocery store or to the doctor and your work hours run out and you clock out and you clock where you are?
Yeah, so that's a great question as well. So again, I mean, there's going to be perfectly valid reasons for the location not to match, right? So sometimes we're picking up the person at the church or at their school, and that's where we're clocking in and that sort of thing. We do in our system, again, you have to check what the state allows on this, but we, like, for example, in the state of Kentucky, we have people who they get home care and they also have like adult day health care. And so they've put in the the two addresses. So they'll basically say, the day center address is a valid address for starting or ending care, as well as the client's home. And the details for Kentucky are close, but not, like, we don't have that level of detail yet, whether that's going to be something that we have to log and note as an exception. But yeah, I mean, if there's a case where you're handing somebody off to another caregiver or something or ending your shift at the grocery, then you are going to get that GPS failure. And like with everything, when an exception comes up, it has to be documented so that you have a valid reason for that, and that it's documented, and that it's able to be submitted for EVV for immediate payment, and then also ready to be defended in an audit situation. So great question.
All right, I have another one. This is the one that is a response to one of the questions that you had that we already asked about the scheduled times. So it says, so we can change the scheduled times post the visit being done. That'd be great. It's seen as compliant. The aggregators do not allow this to occur. I believe there may be some conflict. I love your answer that it can be changed, but concerned as to the appropriateness of it. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so thank you so much for pointing that out. And again, I try to give the caveat at the beginning that we have to really look at the very specific rules of your state and your EVV program and what they consider to be compliant and not compliant. I can't answer that for all 50 states, unfortunately. But yeah, so bottom line is that I guess, I mean, if we take that's the letter of the law in your state, then I think what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to, go into a system. I think it was Florida, like HHA or TELUS, and hopefully they have a reason code in there that said, schedule was changed at client's request, or, schedule was changed for whatever valid reason, and you might have to encode that on the on the portal on that side. But I guess bottom line is, if you're EVV software vendor like us, I mean, if there is a valid reason code, like when we work at TELUS, they give us the list of valid codes, and and then if we send it up there with one of the valid TELUS codes, then from there, that'll trigger, even though it wouldn't officially match using TELUS's terminology, then TELUS would say, okay, well, it didn't match, but we have the exception code that came up from the agency, so we could release it to the to the MCO for payment. So I hope that's a better answer, and thank you for keeping me really in line on that, because we're not in a position at all to to make or override policy on behalf of any individual state. We just need to understand the rules to the same degree that you do, and then make the system as easy to use as possible for your agency. So thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I have some more. If the caregiver forgets to clock out, does the system clock them out?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the way that we do that is that we have this function we call on hold. And I think if we went to that schedule board that I had up, there are a couple of visits here that are marked as on hold. And what we do is, we have something that runs in the middle of the night. So it's a typical situation where the caregiver, they do their work, they forget to clock out, and that kind of thing. And we have something that will detect that case, and it'll just put the visit on hold, and that requires an action on the part of the reviewer. But it just makes it clear that this visit was clocked in and not clocked out, and then the person reviewing the next day calls up, and usually, again, it's the policy of your state and your agency, but in most cases they require that to be backed up by a paper timesheet signed by the client, and all that kind of thing. But yeah, we put it on hold, and then our our on hold process, if you will, is smart enough to look and say, hey, this is a shift that's like an overnight shift, right? So the person's supposed to be there from 10 p.m. till 6 a.m. and they clocked in at 10 p.m. So don't put that visit on hold. So it does, kind of look at the, what I would say are the majority of visits that, here we are on Tuesday the 11th, anything that was supposed to be done during the day on the 10th, and we're looking at, let's say, 2 in the morning and it wasn't clocked out, then we put it on hold, and kind of get that answer the next morning. We don't like just assume that they worked their scheduled time or anything like that. That's why we put it on hold, because we need the conversation to happen between the agency and the client, and perhaps the the agency, the caregiver, and the client, just to confirm what times they were really there and get that documented, usually with a paper timesheet.
All right, great, thank you. I have another one. Do we have to approve each visit if someone is 5 minutes late or leave 5 minutes early?
Do you have to approve it if they're 5 minutes late, 5 minutes early? So I think that might go back to the kind of the Florida question, like of how close to your scheduled time you might need to be. So maybe that person could put what the constraint is in that particular state. I mean, like I said, in most places, we're seeing that the interest is on the scheduled duration versus the scheduled time. And and if you're a couple of minutes off, it's usually okay. But then the other kind of big question that gets drawn by this is what we call the rounding rule, right? So in some states, what they have is what they call round to the nearest 15 minutes. So if the person works 55 minutes and they're supposed to work an hour, then you would round to an hour. But in other states, they have a different rule. Like, for example, in Missouri and Virginia, you could only bill for completed units of care. And actually in Virginia at the moment, although it's under review, it's completed hours of care. So like taking a Missouri example, if the person, using that same example, they worked 58 minutes, you could only bill for 45, and then you have to hold on to those extra 13. But the good news is that, like, let's say that the next day the person worked an hour and 4 minutes, you could say that, those 13 extra minutes from yesterday could be combined with the 4 hours from today, and you could bill an extra unit. They call that accumulated minutes. And similarly, in Virginia, if the person worked 2 hours and 58 minutes, you would bill the 2 hours, and then you would hold on to the 58 minutes until you get enough, kind of extra minutes to bill for the extra hour. So yeah, I mean, I guess that there's a couple ways that that question of 5 minutes could go. It's either, how the rounding works, which again varies by state, but those rules are usually very explicitly described. Or it's kind of more of a question of, how tight do you need to be to the scheduled duration, like we heard with the example in Florida.
All right, great. Thank you. Okay, I have a question about the GPS. We have a lot of clients that are out in the middle of nowhere in rural areas, and the GPS is not always spot on. Will the new app help if they're standing in the same place, showing the clock in and clock out a little bit more accurately?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So what you'll find is that even in places that don't have good, mobile network coverage, you are getting a pretty accurate GPS. So I guess the app will help in that regard. But what happens, especially, when I'm picturing the situation, where you're kind of in a rural area and the person, like, we have a client whose like name is Grover or something, and they live on one Grover Lane, and Grover Lane is like, is like a driveway that's like a half a mile long. And one Grover Lane, from the perspective of, let's say, Google Maps or the post office, is right there on the highway, but the house itself where the care is delivered is like half a mile away. So the way that we recommend working with that, and and again, with the caveat about the state and your rules, is that we have a function where if you kind of picture on Google Maps where something is, and you say, well, that's kind of the pinpoint, we have a way that you could adjust the GPS location and, in a sense, move the pin. And what we do with agencies, we say, okay, well, when you're going to do that, we need to kind of take screenshots of the maps, and also with Google, kind of get that satellite view. And so we kind of recommend that you get some good documentation. You say, okay, well, here's the big view of where one Grover Lane starts right off of Highway 322, and here's where the house is, and and then you basically move the GPS location to where the house is, and you have the documentation in your files for that. And that's so that's kind of how we handle that situation. We call that moving the pin.
All right, thanks. I have a couple more. How many questions would you like?
No, let's keep going. Let's say we'll go maybe 3 more questions.
Okay, perfect. So does Ancoda have telephony, and how much does it? Also, how much does Ancoda cost?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so Ancoda has we have the mobile app that I showed. We also have the voice telephony. And as far as the cost, I mean, it depends. I mean, our model, we'll put it this way, is a per client per month model. So you're paying a fee based on how many clients you have that are in your census for that month. And and I guess our solution starts at $99, but that's not my kind of question. That's more, I'm not sure if Joel, our head of sales, is on the line, but I'm sure if you're interested in the system, he would love to talk to you about that. But that's, yeah, so it's basically a per client per month, and it starts at $99 a month.
Great, thank you. I have one. What if you forget to clock in and out, but have made your hours? So I guess
right.
If you've okay.
Yeah. So again, so you've kind of done your hours, but you didn't clock in and clock out, right? So so the answer is, it depends. If you're like, out of 100 days that happened one time, then you call the office and you say, oh my gosh, I got here, Mrs. Johnson was calling out for me right when I came in the door, and I forgot to clock in, and I was so frazzled, and that kind of thing, right? If you're that 99% compliant person, then the agency is going to say, okay, that we understand, and they'll ask you to back it up with the with the paper timesheet, and they'll be able to code that as they put it into the system and send it up for approval, as it didn't have the EVV information. But then again, I mean, the state will be able to say, okay, well, the agency is 93% compliant, and this caregiver is usually 99% compliant, so it's going to be fine. So that's, essentially some flavor of that is what, how it's going to work in pretty much all the different cases.
All right. And then I'm going to couple two questions together here. So the first is, which other state does your system comply with? And then how can I find out what's happening in my state with EVV?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, to give the list of the ones that we comply with would be kind of a long question, but we actually, if you go to, this is ancoded.com. Let me just kind of go to the beginning here. If I go to, kind of Ancoda's website, we actually have, tried to put a lot of resources together for EVV, and we have, it's kind of our top solution, of course, is EVV. So if you go there, you get that resource page that I was just on, and it explains a lot of the things we talked about here. Where does it come from? The legislation, blah, blah, blah. But one of the things that we have in here is this button that says, EVV state by state. And actually, I mean, to the people who are online, we'd love to ask you a favor, is that, here you could go in and you could say, you could look up your state and you could either scroll down to it alphabetically, or you could kind of choose it from the list. And this is the best information that we have. So if I wanted to see, let's say, what's going on in Missouri, right? I could go down to Missouri, and it would say that, Missouri has the provider choice model, and they've announced that they're going to have an aggregator. And there's some things here about, how that rounding of the units work and all that type of thing. And then here's a Missouri EVV page. So I guess, just to kind of go through that navigation again, go to Ancoda, go to EVV, and I'll do it one more time. And then we've kind of written this more like a book with chapters. And so, so if I kind of go down and I find the chapter on what's going on state by state, go ahead and look up your state, and that this is the best information that we have, for your state. But it could be that, something better because, just in the past couple of weeks, there's been announcements. For example, Kentucky and Nebraska have announced that they're using TELUS, which is, one of the people used in Florida and in and in Virginia, for example. And so this information is evolving all the time. But yeah, so you could kind of come here and see what's there. And if you are an expert on what's going on in your state, and you see something that's not correct here because it has evolved, or or a better source of information, there's usually a little pop-up that'll come on the page that'll say, do you have any better information? And you could answer that, or let us know. But I guess even jumping, so here, like starting with Alabama, it says the state of Alabama has chosen the state mandated system model, and the system that you have to use is Authenticare. So I guess, bottom line is, if you're coming to this webinar and this would be a good first place to check, because if you're, for example, in Alabama, then, Ancoda might not be the system for you, but anywhere you see something that says like this provider choice model, that means that you as a home care provider can choose which vendor you want to work with. So great question. All right, so Sarah, I think we said 3 more, and that was the 3. Do you have like one more burning one? And I guess what we could do is we'll promise that if we didn't get to your question, we'll email out to you if we have your email information, and that kind of thing. But do you have any that we should also that we should take, or should we wrap up and keep it within the hour?
Yeah, I think we've pretty much answered all of them. I have one more, but I'm gonna take it.
Okay, yeah, I'll take it. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm in New Hampshire and we don't have EVV details yet, but in other states, if EVV isn't right, does the claim get rejected?
Okay, yeah. So so thanks for the New Hampshire question. Yeah, I think that, bottom line is, if something's not perfect about EVV, they're not expecting 100%, and there will be announced the procedure that says, all right, you have to turn in your EVV, and you have to, convince us that you have adjudicated or looked over those exceptions and, kind of put the information in. So that's kind of how it's going to need to go, and then how it needs to be documented specifically in New Hampshire. We're very actually, being a Boston company, and we have a pretty big nation or statewide New Hampshire customer. We're kind of dying to know that answer. So, so that would be, that'd be good to know. So thanks for that. All right, so I'm going to go on. I just have, this kind of question of how could we help? I mean, we are, as I mentioned, the software vendor that does EVV. We've shown our software, so we'd love to be your vendor if we're somebody who would, can be used in your state. And if you don't have a system, or if you're looking for an upgraded system, or maybe you don't have offline mobile and that type of thing. And, so you could email sales@ancoda.com, or, we try to make our phone number very easy, 8444-ANCODA. If you could remember how to spell Ancoda, that would be great. The other thing, and actually, great credit to Sarah, whose voice you've been hearing, and Jed from Ancoda, who's our director of customer success, is that we've really tried to make 2020 the year of community, and they've actually created a website that's deliberately separate from Ancoda called homecarecommunity.com, and it's pretty new. But what we're trying to do is, anytime there's events from us, or or maybe another vendor, or there's we hear about a state presentation or conferences or things like that, we're trying to share that on homecarecommunity.com, and we're also setting up like forums like in specific states, because as we know with Medicaid, every state has its own little rules and idiosyncrasies. So it could be helpful for you to have chats with people in your state. But yeah, but clearly, I mean, if you're interested in software for EVV, we're here for you as well. And even if you have software and you're not going to choose us at this time, maybe you'll choose us in the future. But even if you're not going to work with us and we can help you, we're all about community and trying to keep the whole home care world sound and safe and all that kind of thing. So yeah, with that, I mean, let me thank you, the heroes of home care. I mean, we are an industry that's, very well socially isolated industry that's keeping a lot of, elderly and disabled people safe and COVID free in these days. And, and really, I mean, let's never forget that mission, and let's never forget how important it is, what we're doing. And, as agency owners, you probably don't get thanked for that very much. So let me thank you on behalf of all the people that you take care of, and on behalf of the states that you serve and the individuals that you serve. And with that, I think we will we'll kind of wrap up this webinar for today. And thanks again.
Thanks for watching this video from Ancoda. For further information, scroll down and click on the link in the video description below. Have a great day.